welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's topic is step number 3, positive thinking of my 13-step foundation to healing from post-traumatic stress and trauma. As always, I've got everything we're going to talk about listed on the board. If you want to follow along, take notes. It's just something I do to make it easier, so if you want to do that, go for it. And also everything that I do talk about in these videos is all contained in my book, The Sword and the Anvil, a definitive guide for healthy natural healing from post-traumatic stress and trauma. And these videos, the intention of them is to show you how to best implement what is in my book so that you get the most out of it. It's just another free resource that I provide for all of you to help you along in your journey. So, as I stated, we're going to talk about step number 3, positive thinking. The important thing to remember about this step is that, and you have to start, here we go, talking about training your brain, retraining your brain again. Every experience you have had is a learning opportunity. So we have to begin to start making ourselves look at all of our experiences as a learning opportunity. Because really what you're doing, when you start thinking like that and you start looking at all of your experiences like that, and you actually do learn something from them and apply it, you're turning all of your experiences into positive ones, because you're gaining something very beneficial out of each and every experience you've had. That's very important. And it goes along with our last step number 2, awareness. This is part of having an awareness of yourself and what's going on. And again, as I mentioned in the last video too, that it's laying the foundation and the building blocks not only for all the other steps that have followed, but one of the biggest steps, which is step number 5, and that's retraining your brain. So we're starting here with little bits of that, of retraining our brain, building off of our awareness, till we get to that step where we're really going to get into the details and the mechanics of retraining your brain. So there's 5 different parts I have listed here that we're going to discuss about positive thinking. The first one, there's a reason for every experience that you've had. There is a reason for it. Part of that is there's something you can learn here. And, you know, as I mentioned before, that you can grow from this, and you can grow in a positive manner and become a better person for it. Like my own personal, just take for example some of my own personal experiences. I'll talk about one of them. So after I got out of the Marines, I bounced around for a while, and eventually I started my own business. It was a landscaping business. I worked it for quite a while, a year or two, and I got pretty busy. I wanted to expand the business, so I decided to use my GI Bill and I go to school. Well, I got to school. I signed up for a degree in landscaping architecture. The first week of school, I had general classes, and one of the classes was an art history class. And we started talking about Egypt and all the artifacts and stuff, and I said, that's it, right then and there. I changed my mind. I went back down to the advisor's office and changed my degree to anthropology with an emphasis on archaeology. I want to be an archaeologist. So I go to school, get all that done. In the meantime, while I'm going to school, I got a job working at a museum, and I sort of worked my way up till about the time I got out of college. A few years later, I was doing archaeology work as well. I worked for some archaeological firms around. I eventually worked my way up to a position as an assistant archaeologist to the boss that I had for the city I lived in at the time. Through that process, I also learned how to write. My boss started teaching me how to write, and then that led into, they were talking to me constantly about writing a book. You know, they kept saying, Robert, you should write a book about your experiences in the war. I thought about it for a while, and I finally did it, and that's where this book came from, A Line in the Sand. It's about my experiences on the front lines of the first Gulf War as a Marine. Eventually, the post-traumatic stress got worse. Eventually, I ended up losing my job and went through all these things of bankruptcy. Lost both my houses, like I said, lost my job, ended up in hospital. And then, as I was starting to go through the process of receiving treatment and things like that for post-traumatic stress, I realized how much that this first book helped me in releasing some of these things that I had just pent up inside me. So I decided, well, I'm going to write another book because it helped me so much. And that led me to my second book here, Chrysalis. A metamorphosis has begun. So, and you all know eventually that, I wrote my third book, Sword and the Anvil, which I just showed you when the video started. So what I'm getting at here is every experience that I just explained to you along the way, I learned some things from it. I learned how to heal from post-traumatic stress without medications, without drugs, without alcohol, without depending on anything but myself. I went out and did the research. My job as an archaeologist prepared me to do research. That was a big part of my job. It also prepared me to write. I had the landscaping business. I was doing well with it. That propelled me to go into college. Once I got to college, I changed my major, got into archaeology, like I said, which is where I learned how to do research, which is where I learned how to write, which is where I learned how to speak. So the point I'm getting at is that all those experiences, and there's been many in my life over the past 30 years, but those experiences prepared me. I learned things along the way. I can look back now and see what I learned from them, and I apply it to what I'm doing today, but it also prepared me for what I'm doing today, right here and now. And every single one of you can do the same thing with your experiences. If you switch your brain, retrain your brain to start thinking like that, with this positive thinking, you'll begin to see what I'm talking about. To do that, we're going to have to do the second part. Reflect on your experiences. So what I'm getting at is that you have to think about the things that occurred after each experience. And what they led you to. So as I described my experiences, I thought about each and every one of them, what I learned from them specifically, and where that led me. We just discussed that. So you're going to have to take some time and sit down and think about these things and what you've learned. If you're like me, which I'm sure many of you are, if not all of you, you've had many experiences. So what I suggest doing for this part is write down your experiences. Just get out a piece of paper and write them all down before you even start analyzing anything. Just take out a pad of paper, write down all of your experiences. By doing this, as you write them down and start looking at them, you'll begin to see the reasons for those things occurring, the things that you learned, or maybe you will realize things that you should have learned and didn't learn, but you can learn now and apply. And it's sort of a way also by writing them down to help you organize your thoughts, to be focused, and then you can go through the list one at a time and start thinking about it. And whatever you come up with, write it down. Just jot a couple notes. That's what I did when I was doing this. I sat down with all the experiences in my life, and I wrote down everything that I learned. I thought about, could I have done something differently? If so, how? I wrote down where the things led me. It's an amazing experience and an eye-opening experience when you begin to do this and you start realizing these things. I think that you'll truly be amazed at what you find out about not only yourself, but about life in general. The third part to this is very important. It's a very important part of analyzing the past events in your life, and that is analyzing your dreams. Now, I learned how to do this by studying Carl Jung. who's a famous psychoanalyst. He was a protege of Freud. Big difference between him and Freud is Freud was more scientific. Jung had more of a spiritual connotation to his discoveries and his findings and his theories, which appealed to me. Maybe it won't appeal to you, whatever, and that's fine. But it just made more sense to me. So I went out and I bought just about every book he's written. I've downloaded stuff off the internet, papers and stuff that he wrote. I've watched his videos, different things like there are videos that were made about him. He's long since passed away. And I learned how to analyze my dreams. Carl Jung, that was one of his biggest contributions to society, was the process he discovered of analyzing your dreams. So what you want to do is, so when you wake up, say, even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, middle of the night, you wake up from a dream, write it down. While it's still fresh in your head, write it down. What I do is I keep a pad of paper, a pen, and a little flashlight by the bed. I wake up in the middle of the night, turn the flashlight on, I write down my dream. I sit there and write it down. That way, I don't have to worry about trying to remember it. I fall back to sleep and I sleep good. Otherwise, you'd probably sit there and stress out, I got to remember my dream, and you won't sleep good, and that's going to contribute to your problems that you already have. So like I said, just write it down, no big deal. And when you get up in the morning, look at your dream. Think about what it might mean in your life. And to do that, we have to remember two things. One, your dreams aren't meant to be taken literally. They're symbols. Two, they're often trying to help you work something out that you're dealing with in your daily life. So as far as symbolism goes, what I mean by that is, say, for example, I'll explain one of my dreams that I've had quite a few times. I'd be walking around somewhere, a parking lot, anywhere, and I would be looking for my truck, and I could never ever find it, and I'd be getting stressed out, upset, and I could never find my truck. And I've had that dream, like I said, several times. What does it mean? Well, it certainly doesn't mean, if we take it literally, it means I'm going to lose my truck and forget where I parked it. But like I said, the dreams are symbols. They're not meant to be taken literally. So I had to think about what that might mean. And remember, I said that quite often your dreams are trying to help you work out some sort of conflict that you're having in your waking life every day. So I started thinking about that. And I thought, well, it's obvious. Because every time I had that dream, I was getting off my path of what I was supposed to be doing and focusing on. And basically the dream was trying to tell me, you're losing your way. My vehicle, and just as many of you, your vehicle, whatever it is, a bicycle, a motorcycle, a car, truck, van, skateboard, whatever, is your way to go everywhere. So basically, like I said, the dream was telling me, hey buddy, you're getting off your path. You're losing your way again. You need to refocus and get back on path. Find your way again and get going. So that's kind of an idea what I'm talking about in terms of analyzing your dreams. Now, like I said, Carl Jung was the one that discussed all of that. And I must have 30 of his books, not to mention all the scientific papers and stuff. A lot of it's hard to get through. A lot of it I had to read 3 or 4 times. So unless you're like me, you'll probably, you'll want to go out and read all that stuff. But a lot of it, like I said, is hard to get through. But not to fret, don't worry. Because in this book here, I've already taken Chrysalis. I discuss all my dreams and how I analyzed them during the period when I was going through the post-traumatic stress. So don't worry, it's all explained right here in one book. And so if you're so inclined to, just read the one book and find out how to do it and see an actual application of it, because I've listed many, many dreams in there, it'll be probably a lot easier for you to understand, a lot more helpful, and you won't have to spend all the time I spent researching it. It took me a couple years to go through all that stuff. So the Chrysalis is a good resource for that. It helps teach you how to analyze your dreams. Number 4. This is important as well, because we're not going to get anywhere with any of this unless we complete part number 4, which is take what you've learned from your experiences and apply it to your life every day. Once you start doing that, what you've learned becomes concrete. It becomes part of your life. And at that point, you are now building that positivity from your positive thinking. And once you keep doing this, it becomes a habit. And you keep doing it over and over again because you've retrained your brain. And I still do all this today because I learned what a valuable tool this is. I still think about my experiences when they happen. Sometimes, I'll get a little upset, something happens, whatever, but I always sit myself down and say, okay, Robert, let's think about this. Why did this happen? What can I learn from this? And then I figure it out, and I'm pretty good at it now. It doesn't take me as much time as it used to figure these things out. And then I apply it to my life. Same thing with my dreams. I still keep a pad of paper and a pen and flashlight by the bed. I still write them down when I wake up. And I can sit there and think about it in the morning while I'm meditating, having a cup of coffee, sitting there in a nice peace, quiet. I can think about it, and usually within that half an hour that I sit there and have a cup of coffee, meditate, I figured out what it means. And then I can right away apply it to my life that day. And as we had talked about throughout the video, this leads us to part number 5. Positive thinking comes with an awareness of self, which was step number 2 that we discussed in the last video, and helps build the foundation to step number 5, retraining your brain, which I also just talked about. So if you've watched the step number 2 video, step number 1, and this one, you'll see where I'm sort of helping you to lay the foundation to that big step number 5 in retraining our brain. So part of this of part 5 is we have to have a conviction that there's a lesson embedded in every event, encounter, and experience in our life. We also have to understand that as humans, we have the cognitive ability to look back at our lives and reflect on those events and figure this thing out. Animals don't have that. Animals live in a perpetual state of fight and flight, or flight, I should say, which is what happens to you with the post-traumatic stress, right? You get into a dangerous situation where your brain perceives something as dangerous and your fight or flight response kicks in. And then you panic, you do whatever. We as humans have the ability to get ourselves out of that. And to do what we need to do, and we have the cognitive thinking abilities to figure all this out and sort of retrain ourselves and relearn to act differently to situations. Animals don't have that. They live in a perpetual state of fight or flight. Look at chickens, for instance. They're very nervous birds. They're always almost like panic-stricken, that's how I felt when I had post-traumatic stress. I'm sure a lot of you probably feel the same way. But we have the ability to change that. We have to remember that we need to perceive all the events in our life as the sort of like petri dishes that facilitate growth and learning. Because that's what we're doing. We're taking all this which we once perceived as negative, or even currently perceive as negative, and we're going to turn it into something positive because we're going to learn from it and we're going to grow from it. And we must understand and we must accept that each event is a gift that promotes your physical and mental growth. And I know you're probably sitting there saying, oh, it's not a gift. This is horrible. Yeah, it is horrible. I know it is because I lived through it. But once I started thinking like this, again, it's positive thinking. We're thinking positively about what happens to us. And by thinking positively, that is very powerful. And again, all this with PTSD, it's a fight. It's a lot of work. I know it took me several years to heal from it after suffering from it for about 20 years. So, but it can be done. And all these things I'm talking about are all things that I've done. Most of them I still currently do, because they're wonderful tools for navigating life in itself. Okay, and as always, at the end of each chapter in my book, Sword and the Anvil, I do this little diagram with the word, whatever the step is. So in this case, it's positive. That kind of gives you an overview of what this particular step is about, and it also brings it across your mind again a second or a third time so that it solidifies it in your mind and that you remember it. Because like I've stated before, scientists and professionals say that to really learn something you have to go over it at least 3 times, whether you read it, write it, speak it, whether you read it 3 times, whether you write it 3 times, whatever. The key is to just do it 3 times. And so by reading the chapter, by watching this video, by looking at this little diagram that I do, I've already helped you see it 3 times or do it 3 times without having to worry about it. So let's go over the little diagram. So positive, P, preparing, O, R, S, sentient, I, intellect, T, 2, I, intuitively, V, view, E, everything. Preparing our sentient intellect to intuitively view everything. And this, my friends, is positive thinking. So having said that, please remember a few things. Number 1, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It helps me out. It helps me get my message out to more people. The more people I get my message out to, the more people you share it with, the more subscribers I get, obviously helps me to help a lot more people. And that's what this is all about. Also, check the drop down box below the video. I have all my links there to all my work, to different things I've done, and information that you might find valuable. And lastly, stay tuned for the next video, which is step number 4, gratitude. So you can see how all these steps build upon each other, because like I said, it's a foundation that we're building. Once you build a foundation, no matter how many times you get knocked down from there on out, you have a foundation to rebuild from. Without that foundation, you don't have anything to start from. You got to start all over again. So having said all that, I'm gonna check out for now. So stay healthy, be happy, and I'll see you next time.